After they left the palace, Qin Mu stopped and told the two palace maids that they could return because he would not need them for the rest of the journey. The two maids were identical twin sisters, both bright and quick-witted, but they refused because Empress Dowager had specifically ordered them to escort him all the way back to Imperial College. Qin Mu then asked Ling Yusho to return with the two maids. But Ling Yusho refused. She believed that with her beside him, the little Poison King would not dare attack him. Qin Mu sighed and explained that apothecaries could kill people regardless of their cultivation realm. He had originally only needed to protect himself, but now he would also have to protect Ling Yusho, so it might become difficult. The two palace maids laughed at his warning. They pointed out that Qin Mu was only in the 5 elements realm, while the little Poison King and both of them were in the 7 stars realm. Furthermore, Empress Dowager had given them a treasure specifically to deal with the little Poison King. They confidently declared that if he dared to appear, the two sisters would definitely capture him. Qin Mu shook his head and warned them that they were too naive because apothecaries could kill people across cultivation realms. Even he could poison celestial being realm experts to death. So the little Poison King was even more dangerous. He allowed them to follow but told them to remain alert because he might not be able to protect both of them. The two palace maids continued giggling. The group proceeded through the crowded streets with one lantern carried in front and the other behind. Carrying lanterns in broad daylight was highly conspicuous. But because the two women wore palace clothing, no one dared approach and question them. Imperial College was a long distance from the palace. Even after walking 6 or 7 miles, they had not yet arrived. During the journey, Qin Mu continued refining medicine and eventually finished refining the herbs he had been carrying. He then reached his hand into his peyote sack, leaving only his arm and shoulder visible as they moved slightly. The hand techniques he used and the medicine he refined inside the sack could not be seen. Meanwhile, the two palace maids remained extremely vigilant. Whenever flies or spiders appeared nearby, they immediately killed them with sword lights, preventing any insects from approaching. After they continued walking, a cold wind suddenly swept toward them. The two women immediately activated their vital qi, causing the lanterns to shine more brightly. The lantern light formed 2 circular barriers around them and prevented the cold wind from entering. One of the palace maids confidently laughed and mocked the little Poison King, asking whether those were the only methods he possessed. Before she could finish speaking, however, her delicate face suddenly turned black and she collapsed. Her twin sister behind her also collapsed heavily to the ground and lost the ability to move. Ling Yusho was shocked and quickly looked around, asking why she was still unaffected. A moment later, she too collapsed backward with a thud. Once all 3 women were down, several pitch-black tentacles covered with spikes emerged from the ground. The tentacles had pierced the women's lower legs and poisoned them. Qin Mu flicked his finger, causing the tentacles to thrash violently before dissolving with sizzling sounds into small puddles. The ground trembled again, indicating that an enormous creature was moving beneath them. Qin Mu immediately took out 3 spirit pills and used them to suppress the poison, allowing the 3 women to recover consciousness. Suddenly, a voice came from a distance, angrily asking whether Qin Mu had given tonic to its baby. The ground exploded with a tremendous boom and split apart, causing nearby houses to collapse. An enormous strange insect emerged from beneath the earth. It was approximately 30 yards tall and hundreds of yards long, and its entire body was covered in tentacles. This was the insect king that the little Poison King had been raising. The little Poison King had hidden himself with the insect king, but once he brought the creature back to his side, Qin Mu's tonic began taking effect. The insect king's body swelled uncontrollably, and even the little Poison King could not suppress the effect of the tonic. At that moment, the little Poison King was miserably sprawled across the insect king's back. Qin Mu calmly asked the 2 palace maids what they were waiting for and ordered them to attack. Although the 2 women were still groggy from the poison, they immediately poured their vital qi into their lanterns. The lantern light shot toward the insect king like countless swords, piercing through its enormous body and turning it into a sieve. The little Poison King received numerous sword wounds and disappeared into a puff of smoke. The 2 palace maids then directed their lanterns toward the ground. Under their light, the earth became transparent, allowing them to see dozens of yards beneath the surface and search for the little Poison King. However, their poison had not actually been removed. Qin Mu had only suppressed it. The venom soon began showing signs of breaking out again. so they could not safely activate their magical powers. Qin Mu immediately stopped them from pursuing the Little Poison King. He explained that the Little Poison King had already suffered a defeat and that forcing him into desperation could cause him to release poison throughout the capital, potentially killing countless people. Instead, Qin Mu decided to cure the poison in the three women first, warning that delaying any longer would make the situation dangerous. He extracted a tiny drop of fresh blood from each of them and found that their blood had already turned black. Although all three had been poisoned by the same venomous cane, the quantity of venom inside each person was different, meaning he had to adjust the treatment individually. Qin Mu spent the remainder of the journey identifying the poison and treating them. By the time they reached Scholar's residence, the poison in all three women had been detoxified, but some remnants remained in their bodies, leaving them light-headed and weak. Before they could reach Qin Mu's room, Ling Yusho and the two palace maids all collapsed onto the floor. Qin Mu frowned, dragged the three unconscious women into his residence, and placed Ling Yusho and the two palace maids on the bed. He then returned to the door and closed it. The dragon Qilin reassured Qin Mu that he would guard the entrance and absolutely prevent anyone from entering, adding that he understood the situation very well. Qin Mu praised him for doing well. Having been exhausted by several days of continuous treatment, Qin Mu finally returned to his room and lay down beside the three women. He soon fell asleep. While sleeping, he suddenly felt a slight itch on his nose and guessed that one of the girl's hair had brushed against it. Without waking, he casually rolled over and pushed one of the women out of the bed. Qin Mu woke from a deep sleep after several days of hard work and discovered that Ling Yusho had fallen asleep under his arm. He carefully got up without waking her, though she had already awakened and pretended to remain asleep out of embarrassment. The twin palace maids had also slept in the room, but Qin Mu's restless movements had kicked them off the bed, so the three girls eventually huddled together while Qin Mu slept alone on the other side. The two maids privately agreed not to report that the princess and Qin Mu had slept together with them on the same bed, knowing that revealing such a matter would damage the imperial family's reputation and could lead to severe punishment. Outside, they introduced themselves as Xianxia and Qinqi, explaining that they served the Empress Dowager and had no surnames. Qin Mu gave them detoxifying pellets, believing the remaining poison in their bodies had already been neutralized after a night's rest. Ling Yusho then hurried out, disheveled and struggling with her clothes and hair, causing Xianqi and Qinqi to escort her back inside to dress properly. Embarrassed, Ling Yusho seriously asked whether she might become pregnant because she and Qin Mu had slept together for almost an entire day and night. The palace maids explained that merely sleeping together did not cause pregnancy and joked that Qin Mu, being a divine physician, would certainly know methods of preventing it. After sending the three women away, Qin Mu noticed that the pear blossoms had bloomed, marking the arrival of spring. He thought that once the first season's grain ripened, the year of disaster would finally be over. With only the dragon Qilin accompanying him, Qin Mu decided to eat outside rather than cook. He then encountered Chancellor Ba Shan, who had seen the princess and the two palace maids carrying lanterns down the mountain and jokingly asked whether they had come from Qin Mu's room. Qin Mu calmly denied the implication and changed the subject to Pongong So. Ba Shan had brought food for him, including steamed stuffed buns, boiled strange beast meat, fermented flour sauce with chopped spring onions, and salted vegetables. While Qin Mu ate, Ba Shan revealed that Pongong So's 6 Directions divine treasure was already halfway through breaking its wall. Pongong So had previously been only at spirit embryo realm, but in less than half a year he had surpassed Qin Mu and reached the 6 Directions realm at an extraordinary speed. Ba Shan explained that Pongong So had been studying at the Hall of 6 Directions in Imperial College alongside Chen Wanyan, Yu Qinghong, Qin Yu, Yun Ke, Fatty Wei, and other scholars. Nun Hong Fa, who taught there, said Pongong So's progress was so rapid that he barely needed her guidance. He had perfected the 5 Elements realm 3 days earlier and was already halfway through breaking the wall into 6 Directions realm, meaning he would become a 6 Directions divine arts practitioner within 2 more days. Qin Mu said that he had essentially perfected the 5 Elements realm but had little understanding of the 6 Directions realm. Ba Shan urged him to visit the Hall of 6 Directions and test himself against Pongong So. He revealed that he had already asked Chen Wanyan to test Pongong So, but Chen Wanyan had been defeated in only 2 moves. Qin Mu was shocked because Chen Wanyan possessed extraordinary aptitude, comprehension, and solid cultivation, ranking only slightly below Fozi and Daozi among the younger generation. Chen Wanyan had once challenged Fozi Foxen when he blocked the gates of Imperial College and had only been defeated after more than a dozen moves. After receiving guidance from the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Chen Wanyan had practically no weaknesses. And after returning from the southern borders, he had spent most of his time in the floor of heavenly records cultivating the god transformation state of the five elements realm. Qin Mu believed defeating such a person in 2 moves would be extremely difficult unless Ponggong So had immediately used a powerful technique such as sword treading mountains and rivers. Ba Shan then explained his real reason for repeatedly urging Qin Mu to meet Ponggong So. He suspected that Ponggong So had been possessed by a spirit. Qin Mu remembered Butcher's account of an old monster from Roland's Golden Palace who had reincarnated 18 times and lived through 19 lifetimes. Ba Shan suspected that Ponggong So was no longer himself but had been replaced by an incomparably terrifying old monster who had lived for 10,000 years and was Heaven Knife's greatest enemy. The very existence that had caused Butcher to abandon his original name and never reveal it again. That entity could cast spells and harm people merely by knowing their names. Since Chen Wanyan had failed to obtain any information from Ponggong So, Ba Shan wanted Qin Mu to investigate him personally. If Ponggong So truly had been possessed by that old monster, killing him would remove Heaven Knife's greatest enemy. But because Ponggong So was still the son of the barbarian D Empire's Khan, Ba Shan could not act without certainty. Therefore, only Qin Mu could safely test him. Qin Mu agreed to go to the Hall of Six Directions because he also needed to break through into the Six Directions realm. Though he embarrassed Ba Shan by admitting that despite spending nearly a year at Imperial College, he did not even know where the Hall of Six Directions was because he had attended only one lesson. Ba Shan decided to take him there. As they left the scholar's residence together, Qin Mu suddenly asked Ba Shan whether he had ever heard of the Heavenly Saint cult. Chancellor Ba Shan threw Qin Mu at the entrance of the Hall of Six Directions and immediately left. Afraid that Qin Mu would continue pestering him to join the Heavenly Saint cult, Qin Mu resentfully declared that he would make Ba Shan join sooner or later. The director of the Hall of Six Directions was Nun Hong Fa, a respected and virtuous Buddhist nun who had taught students there since the establishment of Imperial College. When Qin Mu entered the hall, it was still early and the scholars had not yet arrived, but Nun Hong Fa was already there cleaning the hall. After the bell rang, around 30 scholars entered, including Chen Wanyan, Yu Qinghong, and xianxia. Nun Hong Fa began teaching about the Six Directions divine treasure. She explained that the Six Directions were heaven, earth, north, south, east, and west. To break through the Six Directions wall, a practitioner first had to determine its exact location. The spirit embryo divine treasure could establish the positions of heaven and earth, while the 5 elements divine treasure and its 5 element stars were needed to determine north, south, east, and west. The scholars had already learned the 10 computational canons, and Nun Hong Fa taught them how to use the Six Directions computational canon. Beginning with the south compass point algorithm on page 17, Qin Mu noticed Ponggong So among the scholars. Unlike the others, Ponggong So was not listening to the lecture. He had closed his eyes and was already attempting to break through his Six Directions wall. While the lecture continued, xianxia secretly poked Qin Mu and whispered that she had seen the cult master dragging 3 girls into his room the previous night. Qin Mu firmly denied it. When she mentioned that one of the girls had been the 7th princess, Qin Mu became embarrassed and accused her of damaging his reputation. He then asked to borrow her Six Directions computational canon because it was his first time attending the class and he did not have a copy. Nun Hong Fa noticed their whispering and angrily ordered both of them to leave the hall and stand against the wall. Outside, xianxia gave Qin Mu her computational canon and jokingly warned him that the cult master was lustful and that he should be careful not to suffer the same fate as cult master Li. Qin Mu carefully studied the Six Directions computational canon. He discovered that its calculations were based on the 5 phases quinary system and the Six Directions scenery system. The method first used the 5 element stars to determine their positions and then converted the calculations from the quinary system into the scenery system to determine the 6 directions. The south compass point algorithm could establish the south, after which north, east, and west could also be determined. By drawing a straight line from heaven to earth, a practitioner could precisely locate the six directions wall within the body. Because every person's 5 elements divine treasure was located differently, everyone's 6 directions divine treasure was also slightly different. Therefore, the calculations had to be extremely precise, since even a small error could cause a practitioner to break the wrong location and die. Qin Mu quickly finished studying the computational canon and suddenly remembered the advice of Dushan Devil King. Dushan Devil King had previously told him that the 8 trigrams could be used as an octal calculation system. This had allowed Qin Mu to comprehend the other calculation methods contained within the computational canon of supreme mystery. He realized that the Taiji 8 trigrams incorporated the yin-yang binary system, the 4-symbol quaternary system, and the 8 trigram octal system. Qin Mu then connected this understanding with the 5 phases and 6 directions. He remembered that the Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had said that the 4 great spirit bodies were not simply the 5 phases. Instead, each spirit body contained the 5 phases. Therefore, the azure dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise corresponded to the 4 symbols of the Taiji 8 trigrams. Each of the 4 symbols contained the 5 phases, and different arrangements of the 5 phases formed the 4 symbols. This meant that the 5 phases quinary system could also be used to calculate the transformations of the 4 symbols, creating a method of calculation from 5 to 4. The 4 symbols could then determine north, south, east, and west, while yin and yang could be incorporated to calculate the 6 directions. Qin Mu realized that this allowed him to calculate the position of his 6 directions divine treasure far more quickly. Qin Mu returned the computational canon to xianxia and began demonstrating his new method. He placed his right palm against his left palm and pulled his hands apart vertically. His vital qi immediately formed a strange Taiji diagram containing yin and yang, the 4 symbols, and the 5 phases contained within the 4 symbols. When he separated his hands again, layers of the Taiji 5 phases diagram split apart and operated according to a precise and orderly pattern. Xianxia was amazed by the constantly changing diagram and asked Qin Mu how he had calculated it. Since it was somewhat different from Nun Hongfa's method, she asked him to teach it to her so she could copy it. Qin Mu rapidly performed the calculations while dividing his attention to explain his comprehension to her. Xianxia quickly understood the principle because of her exceptional talent. She realized that Qin Mu's method was much more efficient than the 6 directions computational canon. The traditional method could take 1 or 2 months to obtain a result and was prone to mistakes, whereas Qin Mu's method could produce the result within only 2 to 4 hours with much less chance of error. Qin Mu explained that Taiji, the 4 symbols, the 5 elements, the 6 directions, and the 8 trigrams had originally been tools of calculation. As Qin Mu continued studying the computational canon of supreme mystery, many previously difficult problems became easier to understand. However, he also realized that the computational canon alone would not be sufficient for him to successfully cultivate the teleportation divine art. While Nun Hong Fa continued her lecture, Qin Mu eventually determined the precise location of his 6 directions divine treasure. It was near his Dantian, where heaven and earth connected. This place was also called the Lower Dantian, where the 6 directions converged. Dao sect called it the Yellow Court. The Middle Dantian was located at the heart and was known as the Crimson Palace, while the Upper Dantian was located between the brows. Dao sect called it the Spirit Platform, while Buddhism called it Square Inch Mountain. After locating his 6 directions wall, Qin Mu gathered all of his extremely dense vital qi and launched it toward the wall. His cultivation was already far denser than that of ordinary practitioners. His first strike caused the 6 directions wall to become covered in cracks. His second strike produced an even greater rumble, like enormous waves crashing against the shore. Each successive attack became stronger and more violent. Finally, the 6 directions wall shattered, leaving a huge opening. Qin Mu continued pouring vital qi into it, widening the broken section. The tremendous sounds coming from his body attracted the attention of Nun Hong Fa and the other scholars. Nun Hong Fa immediately rushed outside in alarm and warned Qin Mu that breaking the 6 directions wall without first determining its exact location could result in death. As she spoke, a tremendous rumble erupted from Qin Mu's body, sounding as though heaven and earth had been opened. His cultivation immediately began rising rapidly. Qin Mu had successfully broken his Six Directions wall and awakened his Six Directions divine treasure. At almost the same moment, another rumble came from inside the Hall of Six Directions. Ponggong So had also successfully awakened his Six Directions divine treasure. However, because everyone was focused on Qin Mu, nobody noticed Ponggong So's breakthrough. The air around Ponggong So became increasingly dense. His gaze flickered, and he stood up from his mat to look outside. Nun Hong Fa then instructed Qin Mu to close all of his divine treasures and open them simultaneously. Qin Mu gathered himself, closed his spirit embryo divine treasure, 5 elements divine treasure, and 6 directions divine treasure, then released them together. 3 tremendous rumbles came from his spirit platform, Crimson Palace, and Imperial Court as his 3 great divine treasures opened at once. His aura increased explosively. Nun Hong Fa was astonished that Qin Mu had truly awakened his 6 directions divine treasure. She then looked towards xianxia, who was also attempting to break her 6 directions wall. It was obvious that xianxia had likewise determined its exact location. Nun Hong Fa had originally driven Qin Mu and xianxia out of the classroom for whispering. But she had never expected them to determine the positions of their 6 directions walls so quickly. Qin Mu had even succeeded on his first attempt and become a divine arts practitioner of the 6 directions realm. Nun Hong Fa respectfully asked Qin Mu whether he could pass down his secret method for calculating the location of the 6 directions wall. Since it was much faster than the 6 directions computational canon, Qin Mu agreed and said that he was willing to share his understanding with Nun Hong Fa and the other scholars. Nun Hong Fa happily invited him back into the hall and announced that Qin Mu would give the scholars a lecture. Qin Mu noticed Ponggong So sitting at the back and pointed out that the little prince from the Great Wall had also broken through to the 6 directions realm at almost the same time as him. Qin Mu suggested that they exchange blows. But Ponggong So declined, claiming that he had come to seek knowledge. Qin Mu then offered Ponggong So something else, a set of knife skills created and taught by Heaven Knife. Ponggong So's eyebrows rose, and his attention immediately focused on Qin Mu. At that moment, the miserable shrieks and howls of countless ghosts suddenly rang beside Qin Mu's ears.